we would not have the Khadra tonight. Depends on how things going. I think we need to give a little more importance to this here. Now, to do this here, we have here, I am incredibly proud of these guys, running all over New Jersey, defending civil rights, defending the Muslim situations, and make sure that they have the rights. So, with the recent situation that has been happening in immigration, tonight they will talk to us about to know your rights, what you should do, right? Because there are different categories and different types of visa, and how you should operate if you're traveling. So tonight we have Dia, and Salahuddin will be discussing this with us here tonight. And as I said, this is so important for all of us, because it's very important for us to take care of our community, because when someone in our community, something is not going well, it affects us also. So we want to make sure, you have a clear understanding how to operate under these circumstances.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. How is everyone doing tonight? Alhamdulillah. First of all, thank you everyone for hosting us, for allowing us to be here to speak to you a little bit about a very important matter about immigration rights. Right now is a very troubling time for our community and for America in general. You may be very familiar with Mahmoud Khalil's case. Raise your hand if you've heard about the Columbia student who was detained. Okay. Why is this case so troubling? Mahmoud was a green card holder. And in the eyes of the law, green card holders largely are very similar. They have the same rights as American citizens. Mahmoud was arrested, okay, and now he's going to be put in front of a judge. But what is his crime? What did he do that was so wrong, that was so egregious, that deserved an arrest and a potential deportation? Well, he was organizing pro-Palestinian encampments and working to negotiate between the student body and the administration at Columbia University. He was exercising his First Amendment right that applies to all of us, documented, undocumented, green card holder, citizen, visa, no matter what. These rights, the constitutional civil rights, apply to everyone across the board, okay? So his crime is no crime, but the Trump administration is using that against him, okay? And is now trying to push deportation. And they're saying that they're gonna do this to more and more people. So obviously our community is now under the microscope. So it's really important that we understand what are some of the basic rights that we have as citizens, as green card holders, as visa holders, as undocumented residents. What can we do? How do we prepare ourselves if, God forbid, we are confronted with ICE agents or any other government agency? Okay? Brother Dia Turkish from our team, my colleague, is going to read some literature from a trusted source. Now, just disclaimer. CARE is a civil rights organization. Myself and Dia are not immigration attorneys. We are not attorneys, okay? We do not pretend to be attorneys. But what we're going to read to you and we're going to communicate to you is information that is given to us by trusted Muslim immigration attorneys here in New Jersey who have given us this literature to be able to communicate it to you all, okay? So we're going to do our best to help communicate that, inshallah. And if there's any more questions, we'll have to facilitate questions at the table, inshallah. We can't do that here in this space, but at the table we can try to do our best. At the table we also have more literature. So if you're interested in learning more beyond what's shared here, I encourage you to visit the table, grab some of the literature. We have different languages as well. I think I'll pass it to Diana, inshallah. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum. Alright, so I have the amana of addressing you, the jama'ah, with this vital information. Normally, we would sit down, we would have a whole Know Your Rights session, we would bring in an immigration attorney to answer your questions, right? Normally we would do that. We're pressed for time. I'm not going to try to take up all of your time. We have a lot of ibadah to focus on, but for many of us, this may be vital information. So that's why we are here to convey this to you all now in this time and place, because of the urgency, the time that we are in. So, CARE, right, we do a lot of employment discrimination, We do a lot of the FBI contacts you, school bullying, travel issues, these things, right? We don't generally deal in immigration. We don't do that. So the ICE falls under immigration. We can connect you with some Muslim immigration attorneys. I cannot answer any Q&A. We're not going to do that now. We're going to move into Tarweeh, right? But you can come ask me. I can direct you in their way. Any specific questions have to be directed to an immigration attorney. And that is the best practice. Direct these questions to immigration attorneys, not even just someone who is an attorney. Because the law, the immigration courts are like a totally different world from criminal court. And then even fewer, you have attorneys who understand both, right? So that's very important. This is not legal advice, but this is some vital information that we have to talk about. So first, what is ICE? Who is ICE, right? As we said before, it's not the ice in the freezer or refrigerator. It's the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is a branch of DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. ICE enforces immigration laws within the United States and engages in arrests, raids, detentions, deportations, and removal proceedings. ICE can work with other law enforcement agencies, including the police. So under the Department of Homeland Security, you have USCIS. If you're an immigrant, you have definitely engaged with USCIS, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. You've probably engaged with CBP, the United States Customs and Border Protection. Then you have ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Then ICE is broken up into two different groups, right? You have the ones who work more on like Homeland Security stuff, and then you have the others who are working on the enforcement of the law and removing people. Who is at risk of ICE? Non-citizens without immigration status, generally, right? So undocumented people who do not have a green card or a visa, but people who are now practicing their free speech with a visa, with a green card, are at risk. Citizens, both naturalized and born, are not at risk. It is very rare for a naturalized citizen to have their citizenship revoked or to be denaturalized. It's very, very rare. It can happen, but it's extremely rare. So we're talking about non-citizens, generally. Usually it's those who are undocumented, but even if you have a green card or a visa, things can happen. Non-citizens who have violated the terms of their immigration status. Non-citizens who did not appear for court. Not appearing for court is a great way. If you can't go to court, make sure you reschedule it or something, because that's a great way to get a removal proceeding out, like a bounty out for you. You don't want that. When you have that out for you, it's hard to remove it. It's hard to move forward from there. Not to say that you can't, but that makes it harder. So you want to show up for your court or reschedule. Generally, ICE, this is generally like even before, let's say, the Trump administration, they prioritize people with certain criminal convictions, with prior orders of deportation, or who are believed to be a threat of national security. Now that is what is being stretched right now, right? That these people who are speaking for Palestine, they're supporting groups that the government deems as terrorist organizations, right? So they're stretching that right now. So what do we expect under this current presidential administration? The non-renewal of TPS, non-renewal of OAW parole, more ICE enforcement actions. We see them out and about more. Limiting refugee programs, slowing down consular processing, right, at the consulates. Additional scrutiny of applicants, slowing down processing and work permits. More issues at the border and travel bans. We're going to get into the proposed travel ban shortly. So what does ICE do? What are some common tactics that you should be aware of when they're out and about in our community? They go around, they collect data, they use unmarked cars, they usually visit very early in the morning, they conduct collateral arrests, they obtain private information from cell phones, and sometimes even they pretend to be the FBI, the IRS, or police. And they could be working with the police. So if ICE comes to your door, they're looking for you, they're looking for a family member, right? Regardless of your status, right? There's so many what ifs. What does ICE need to get in your door? They need one of two things. The first being a judicial warrant. judicial meaning a judge has to sign it, not an administrative warrant, okay? So if they show you a warrant and there's no judge signature, it's someone who works for ICE sign that, that is not a judicial warrant. You do not need to let them in. So make sure it's a judicial warrant, meaning that you can see the piece of paper and a judge signed it. You can see the name of the judge, you can see their title, right? They need that to get in your house, or you give them consent. You give them consent to come in your home because you're freaked out, you're anxious, you're nervous. You implicitly let them in, right? You open the door, they step in, you don't stop them, now they're inside. They will interpret that as your consent, okay? So they need one of two things, a judicial warrant or they need your consent. Don't give them your consent. Make that very clear that you do not want to speak to them, that they are not welcome in your home, that they're not to come in, right? Keep the door shut even. You don't have to open the door, or you can shut it, you can speak through the window, etc. Right? One of those two things gives them access. They rarely have a judicial. They rare. Okay, sorry about that. So they rarely have a judicial warrant, okay, the one that's signed by a judge, right? Because they got to go through a whole lot of work to get that. So they'll come up to your house and they'll have an administrative warrant. Make sure you check that out. If it is signed by someone who works for ICE, that means it's not a judge and you don't have to let them in your house. That's really important. They look very different. In New Jersey, the governor has ordered that ICE cannot go to schools, to public schools. So, alhamdulillah, that's good for us. We won't really be expecting ICE to go to schools. They can do that in other cases, but in New Jersey, we're not really going to expect that. They can go to your workplace, though. They can arrive there. They do need the employer's permission, consent, or a judicial warrant. So if they don't have a judicial warrant, right, and your employer lets them in, whether it's implicit or explicit, they give the consent, they're coming in, right? It's not up to you, it's up to your employer. What do you do in that case if they're at your workplace? Don't run away from a workplace raid, because that could result in more criminal charges, actually, if they catch you. You don't want to do that. If ICE stops you, just like any other law enforcement, you want to ask if you are free to go. If they say yes, just calmly walk away. Don't sprint. Just calmly walk away, right? You're not being detained. Okay, I'm out of here. You do not want to lie. Do not lie or show false documents. You have a right to remain silent, just like in every TV show or movie. You have the right to remain silent. Many people do not use this, especially in our community, because they're very anxious, they're very scared, they don't know what's going to happen. But generally, you want to be silent, because it'll just make your case harder later. Or if you accidentally lie or say something of interest to them to make them suspicious, well, now they're going to detain you longer, or maybe even arrest you. You don't want to trigger that. What do you do if you're detained? Right. So before we just said, okay, am I free to go? All right. You said yes. All right. I'm going to calmly walk away. What if they say, no, you're not free to go. You're being detained. Again, remain silent and ask for a lawyer immediately. If you do not have an attorney, you have the right to hire one, because there is no equivalent at the public defender system. The immigration courts do not have public defenders, okay, like criminal court. So you have to get a private immigration attorney. This is very important for everyone who is not a citizen. You need to have a relationship with an immigration attorney. Even if you filed your papers yourself, alhamdulillah, even if you have gone through legal services with paralegals, with people who are not attorneys, you really should have a relationship with immigration attorneys.
One thing I want to add to that, it's very important to also actually memorize the phone number of your attorney, and to memorize their name and the firm that they're from. So this is one thing, and also, especially if you have children, and if you have children who are citizens, it's important to also speak to your attorney and to identify a guardian for your children, and to memorize the phone number and name of those guardians. So once again, keep your documentation safe, filed away. You have to play detective here. You have to keep all of your paperwork. your immigration paperwork, your children's paperwork, any university paperwork, property paperwork, whatever it is, neatly file it away and make copies of it and give that to your attorney. And again, memorize their phone number, memorize their name and their firm. And if you have guardians for your children, in case you are actually taken away, memorize the phone number and name of your guardian.
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly convey some points from one of the immigration attorneys that we are connected with. He says, here are some of my guidelines. Number one, don't panic. Okay, panicking just makes things a lot more difficult. Know that you have rights. You have rights. Okay, don't forget that. Generally, you can always postpone the quote encounter. Let's say ICE meets you at work or at your home. You can postpone this. This is why Brother Slahani is saying you want to memorize the phone number of your immigration attorney. You can only postpone it if you have an immigration lawyer. So if you say, I have a lawyer, but you can't say who it is, they don't care, then really you don't have a lawyer. They know you're kind of, just saying that. So that's why you need to know the name and telephone number. Maybe best practice to keep their card in your wallet or memorize it. If you can say that you have a lawyer, their name and their phone number, then you can postpone the encounter. Then you'll get their business card, you'll find out if they're from ICE, if they're from FBI or somewhere else. Then you can ask, are you free to leave or are you under arrest? But see, if you don't say that you have an immigration attorney and you can't name who they are and give their phone number, they don't have to postpone this meeting and they can insist on asking you more questions. You want to be able to call your lawyer and a family member to alert them where you are, what is happening. If you are being arrested, do not let them in your house without a judicial warrant, as we said. Do not let them enter at all. They will try to even sneak in. They'll try to just come in, right? If you open the door, they walk inside and you don't say anything, they'll take that as consent. So watch out for that.
So you have to verbally express.
You have to say, you are not welcome here. You may not enter. You cannot search the property, etc. You can talk through the door. Lawyers can speak on speakerphone. So if you have your immigration attorney and you can get them on the phone, they can talk on speaker through the door. So you can just put the lawyer on speakerphone and that's sufficient. Now, yes, so generally if you have an attorney too and you can't get a hold of them, you'll get their card and you'll find out their badge number or their name. You need to have that stuff for later so your attorney can contact them. Now, if immigration has picked someone up, like your family member, what are the next steps? Sometimes people think once immigration picks someone up, that it's over. No, it's only the beginning in most cases. What does that mean? You have to go before an immigration judge in most of these cases, or your family member. People that do not have to go to immigration before an immigration judge usually have already been deported in some way or form. Usually the deportations are because they already have been before an immigration judge and they lost a case, right? Or because they have failed to show up to court. But even in cases when someone has a deportation order on their head, sometimes there's even still hope, right? You do not want a removal proceeding on your head. You want to prevent that at all costs. But even if you do have one, there is still some hope. But you may have to reopen your deportation case, right? So you may be at risk again, but you may have to do that. You may still be eligible for bond in certain cases. The thing is, you gotta move as quickly as possible in this situation. How do you do that? You need a skilled immigration lawyer. You need a skilled immigration attorney. This attorney who we're connected with says only about 10% of immigration lawyers deal with deportation, actually. Right? Most of them are just doing visas, H-1B, they're just filing applications, they're just telling USCIS to hurry up. So not every immigration attorney is the best at this either for deportations. The deportation lawyers know how to fight to get people out, okay? Not everybody can do that, and not every person can get out. But an honest deportation lawyer will let you know, usually in one consultation, whether they think that your family member or you can be let out of jail. Now, what are the factors to getting someone out of jail? The most important factor is to make sure that the person has some immigration solution. If someone has been deported in the past and they never married a US citizen, and they don't have US citizen children, or they never put in an application, or they don't have an asylum claim, or a very serious record, the chances are less that person can get out to stop the deportation. If you do have a marriage to a US citizen, or have children who are US citizens, or do have potential for an asylum claim, and you don't have a criminal record, then the chances are much higher than that you can get that person or yourself out of jail, and possibly even to a green card. So yes, people can get a green card when they have been arrested by immigration. Not everybody gets a green card, of course. It depends on the case. But many lawyers who are like among this firm that we're a partner with deal with this day in and day out. So now, lastly, we're going to speak about the proposed travel ban. So again, if you have any questions, you can come speak to us. We can't really answer Q&A on ICE and immigration specifically. I can put you in touch with some of these lawyers, though. So there's a proposed travel ban. We remember the Muslim ban with President Trump in his first term. That was repealed in 2021. Now there's talk that it's coming back, okay? So CARE, the Council on American-Islamic Relations, has issued a travel advisory to all the Muslims who are not citizens. Anyone who's a non-citizen, green card, undocumented, visa, this kind of visa, that, we advise that you do not travel for the next month. We advise that you don't travel until the next month. We don't know when this, all the list of countries are going to be final, when it's going to be enacted. So for the time being, if you do not need to leave the country and you are not a citizen, don't. I'm not saying that certainly something bad is going to happen, but we are strongly advising those of you who are not citizens to not leave the country right now at this time, because when you come back, there could be a serious problem, right? Okay, so there are three proposed groups on this travel ban at the moment. There's a red group, an orange group, and a yellow group. The red group has about 11 countries on it, including countries like Syria. That means no one from Syria who's a citizen of Syria can come to the United States once they enact this. Then in the orange group, these people, citizens of these countries, can come to the United States if they enact this plan, but it will be very hard to get that visa, and you'll have to have an in-person meeting at the embassy in your country in order to do that, and that could take a long time too. Pakistan is on that proposed list, okay, in that orange group. It's not enacted yet, but that's what's floating around. Then there's the yellow group. The yellow group has a lot more countries, a bunch of non-Muslim countries too. And basically the government is going to say to these countries, if you don't change what we don't like, if you don't do what we want, you're going to be in the orange group or the red group. So this is not enacted right now, but Pakistan is proposed to be on the orange group and to make it very hard for Pakistani citizens or not US citizens to travel here. You'll need a special visa that'll be hard to get. So we wanted to just convey this very vital information, and Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Brother Diallo. As he mentioned, we have literature at our table, so please come visit us afterwards. But again, we can't answer any direct questions about your particular situation. We advise that you contact an immigration attorney so we can share that information with you. To wrap up, I just want to say, CARE, the Council on American-Islamic Relations, is America's largest and oldest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization. It's been operating for about 30 years, alhamdulillah, and our job is to be at the front lines to defend, educate, and empower the American Muslim community. We are a unique organization because our network is wide across the country. We have 30 plus chapters across America. Alhamdulillah, we, my colleague Diya and others on our team, our office is in Newark. We fight day in and day out to offer free legal services to anyone who is facing discrimination, harassment, or intimidation because of their religion or their race or their background. We also do educational programs like this to educate the community about their rights in all sectors of public life, whether you're a student, what are your rights on college campuses and public schools, what are your rights as an employee, what are your rights while traveling, etc. And then the third category is advocacy work. Now, right now, we're not immigration attorneys, so we can't help individuals with their cases. Well, what are we doing? Right? Well, through our political advocacy work, we are pushing back against the Trump administration. And we are working with New Jersey elected officials to combat these repressive policies that are hurting so many immigrants in this country. So, through our voice, by being at the table, by advocating for our community, we are challenging these policies. And we're going to continue to do that in all issues, not just immigration, but on freedom of speech, on family matters, on students' rights, all situations that are concerning and pertaining to our community. We are the voice at the table, pushing back against the narrative, pushing back against the oppression that we're seeing. So, we ask you to wrap up with this, and thank you for being patient with us, to please support our office. We are at the front lines defending our community, but we can only continue to operate with your financial contributions. And a lot of scholars, including Dr. Sheikh Akanani of ICPC and many others, have agreed that CARE's unique work does fall under one of the 8 categories of zakat. So we encourage people to allocate a portion of their zakat to support CARE's work. Whether it is tonight or before the end of Ramadan, I encourage you and I invite you to give what you can to support CARE, to protect our community, especially in these very, very trying times. May Allah Azza wa Jalla accept all of us. May He accept our zakat, our sadaqah, our ibadah that we do in His name, and everything that we do to fight for our community, fight for justice, and to protect the kalima of La ilaha illallah here in America, here in New Jersey. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
So if we understand what is happening, we have many organizations that need our help. If there's one organization that we need to support to keep alive among ourselves, it is who? CARE. Right? CARE, because it's very important. This is a massive situation that is happening, and I think we need, each one of us need to be very, very keen in supporting CARE. So please make sure you stop by the table, give something for this cause, because you don't